Mr. Steinman, when will we be able to just breathe a bit? If I can ask that in simple terms.
By the end of September.
By the end of September.
Yes. Why do I say that? Because by the end of September, we are approaching the midway mark of the fiscal year. And this is the very important point I'm making, is that in 3 months, it's not long enough to see an effect, but in 6 months, you start seeing the effect.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the budget, this year's budget, you see that all the tables of last year, they've basically been adjusted by very close to 12%. On the expenditure side, on the income side, the 12% is a very significant increase. And if you look at the growth figures I mentioned, it means that we are mentally still stuck in that 3.5 to 4.5% mentality. We've been conditioned psychologically to expect a lower growth rate. And I'm telling you, Elsevier,
I like the term that you're using, psychologically.
Yes, they're doing something with our heads. I expect a big surprise when we get to the middle of the fiscal year. And my only thing is whether we will again grow 4.4%, unlikely, but not impossible. The question is, when will we see a noticeable difference on ground level?
Yeah.
And that, I can confidently say, will not happen before the end of September. So what it means is that October, November, December.
Okay.
The third quarter of the fiscal year, the last quarter, the final quarter of the calendar year. That's where we're going to see a difference. And that's when I expect that the 12% adjustments in the budget, you can think for yourself. It's not possible to increase half of the economy by about 12% and then not see the effect in the full economy. So and it's not because of gas and oil, and it's not because of foreign reserves and everything. It is just that thing that the government's budget is a policy tool. And as you spend that money in the economy, the longer you carry on with the process, the more prominent, the more noticeable the effect becomes. So the question is, what will interest rates do? Unfortunately, that is not determined by us. It's determined by the United States. Interest rates here will not turn before they don't start turning in the United States. And there's an election on, I think, the 4th of November. That's the most important election in the world, because that election, the outcome of the American election, determines the world economy for the next 4 years. Inflation, I doubt it very much that we will see a moderation in inflation, but I don't expect it to get below 4.5% if we're lucky. I think it's a bit of a pipe dream to expect inflation again of 2.5%. Although I would be the first person to say, that's what we want. We want stability, especially in the cost of living, on the grocery side.
Please.
It's not that important how much cars go up in price, because I can always go buy a second-hand car. But I can't buy second-hand Weet-Bix or coffee powder or second-hand milk. I have to buy that fresh every day from the grocery shop. And that is where the cost of living crisis came from, when normal or ordinary everyday groceries started increasing by 40% over 2 years. That is difficult to turn around. But when towards the end of September into the last calendar quarter, companies' profitability will be improving. And the moment that the manufacturers, and remember, where do our manufacturers sit? Not here, very few of them. Cape Town, Joburg, Durban, all of them are 84% of what you and I eat or use every day comes from South Africa. So it's actually what you have to look at is conditions there.
Yeah.
And as you are aware, there's been a major political change in South
Yep.
Africa. So a lot of people are going to start looking very critically at the inflation situation in South Africa and the interest rate. And remember, we just follow their lead. There's not much that we can do. But the whole thing revolves around, do companies make a profit again, yes or no? And by the final quarter, I am predicting that companies' profitability will have improved to such an extent that they don't need to increase prices anymore.
Yeah.
And that you and I will be able to actually afford our Weet-Bix again for the first time in about a year and a half.
Or 2 years.
Yes.
Well, we have unfortunately come to the end of our talks, but you can, of course, catch us again next week. Thank you so much for keeping it locked to the Power Station Energy 100. This was a Connect Chat Let's Talk Business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. From me, Elsie Tibinyani, and from Mr. Daniel Steinman, we say goodbye.